Dr. Mark Hyman. When most people think of carbohydrates, they think of those big fluffy loaves of white bread and pasta dinner for four. Now, it's true that these are carbs, but they're highly processed, highly refined carbs, and they lead to ill health and weight gain. They also are the exact kind of carbohydrate that you need to avoid when you're on the Daniel plan. However, what you may not realize is that there are many different kinds of carbs, and each interacts differently with your body and your genes, leading to remarkably different effects on your metabolism. You see, carbohydrates are not all created equally, not by a long shot. Carbohydrates are actually the single most important food in your diet for long-term health. Let me say that again. Carbohydrates are the single most important food in your diet for long-term health. Without carbs, you won't last long. Carbohydrates found in their natural form actually contain many essential nutrients and these specialized chemicals we call phytonutrients that keep you healthy and turn up your metabolism. You see, human beings are not designed to metabolize the highly processed carbohydrates that are so predominant in our current diet. These processed and refined carbs slow down our metabolism, and they contribute to every single one of the major diseases associated with aging, including diabetes, heart disease, dementia, depression, and even cancer. However, there are some carbs that are simply perfect for us, and without them, we would perish. Today, I want to review what those carbs are and why they're essential for long-term health. So, what is a carbohydrate? Well, there are three major ways human beings consume energy: carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Now, in the coming weeks, I'm going to discuss fat and protein and why they're important in a little more detail. But let's stick with carbs right now. Carbohydrates are essentially everything besides fat and protein. So they constitute by far the biggest group of foods we eat. Without them, we would starve and die. They comprise approximately 90% of the living world, and estimates shown that 70 to 80% of all calories consumed by humans are carbs. That's all across the world. Now, it's interesting to note that Americans currently only consume about half of their daily calorie intake in the form of carbs. Now, as I alluded to earlier, when you say the word carbohydrate, most people think of what I call the white menace, which is white flour, white sugar, and variants on these. But most bread, pasta, and cereal that you find in your local grocery store contains the white menace and are definitely bad carbohydrates. These carbs are bad for one simple reason. They convert to sugar very quickly in your body. When that happens, it causes your insulin levels to go up and spike. Now, over time, insulin resistance and all those problems that come along with it, like weight gain, inflammation, and all these other chronic diseases occur. In fact, insulin is a fat storage hormone. So the more insulin you make, the more fat you store. But there's another kind of carbs, the good carbs. Now, did you know that vegetables are carbohydrates? So are fruit, so are whole grains and beans. Now, each of these are critical in human health and in human diets, and they have been for millennia. Practically the only thing everyone agrees about in nutrition science today is that eating 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables can reduce your risk from almost every single known disease of modern civilization, including heart attacks, strokes, dementia, and Alzheimer's, cancer, and all the brain and mood disorders like depression so many people suffer from. These important plant foods protect us from disease for two simple reasons. One, they help you control your blood sugar. They control something called the glycemic load. This is how your blood sugar is balanced. And two, they're full of what we call phytonutrients. Phyto means plant. So they're plant nutrients. They're different than vitamins and minerals. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But these are really critical. So they're low glycemic load, and they got lots of phytonutrients. That's fruits and vegetables. So let's talk about why this is so important. And I want to start with just the glycemic load. Now, the glycemic load of a food or a meal is defined as the total effect that food or meal has on your blood sugar. The food or meals you eat can have either a high glycemic load, which is bad and raises your blood sugar quickly, or a low glycemic load, which is good, which means it doesn't really raise your blood sugar that much. Bad carbs have a very high glycemic load. They convert quickly to sugar in your body, and they cause all sorts of havoc. Good carbs, on the other hand, like vegetables, beans, nuts, seeds, fruit, have exactly the opposite effect. They convert to sugar very slowly in the body. They have a low glycemic load. So controlling this factor called glycemic load is so important, and you have to learn how to do it. And it's essential if you want to gain long-term health. And it's relatively easy to do. Here's what you have to do. You combine enough protein and fat and whole food carbohydrates at every snack or meal, and that lowers the whole overall balance on your blood sugar. So when you combine all these things, whole foods, not processed foods, proteins and fats, you get this evening of your blood sugar. So in addition to their impact on blood sugar, good carbs also contain another critical feature. We call these phytonutrients. Now these are healing chemicals that in the end actually may be the most important reason plant foods keep us healthy. So let's talk about them. Carbohydrates have phytonutrients. They don't come in protein from animal foods, and they don't come in fats. They're phyto, meaning plant nutrients. And they're healing chemicals. The word phyto simply means plant. So phytonutrients are the nutrients that are found specifically in plant food. And the only way you can acquire these important substances is to eat real, whole, unprocessed plant foods. You know, as I said before, if it's made in a plant, you don't want to eat it. If it's grown on a plant, you want to eat it. So phytonutrients are essential for optimal health. They help you turn on genes that make you burn fat and age less quickly. They're the source of nature's most powerful antioxidants. So they reduce what we call oxidative stress and aging, as well as inflammation and damage to your mitochondria, which are these little energy factories that keep you healthy as you age. Now, we've all heard the term glycemic index of foods. And in my view, this concept should be replaced by one that judges just how rich the carbohydrates you eat are in these phytonutrients. This new index I would call the Phytonutrient Index. And it gives us much more valuable information than the glycemic index ever did, because it gives us a way to judge how rich our diet is in these healing plant foods. This way of thinking about food has not really been widely adopted, but it's the simplest way of choosing high quality food. Now, there are no good tables or charts to document foods with phytonutrients that are high, but there are some general concepts that you can grasp very easily that'll tell you how to choose these phytonutrient-rich vegetables and fruits. Now, another way to think about this concept is to consider the total amount of phytonutrient loads in the diet. To increase these phytonutrients, here's what you have to do. First, just think if this is something your ancestors may have eaten. If so, take a bite. If not, put it back. You know, if you can't recognize it as food, or if it's a food-like substance, or doesn't resemble anything that you could imagine have grown on a plant, don't eat it. Second, just think of plants in their unadulterated state. Fresh, whole, unprocessed vegetables, fruits, nuts, beans, seeds, whole grains, and think lots of color and variety. You know, an avocado doesn't have a label on it. Peppers and apples and cherries don't have labels on them. These are just plain, whole, real plant foods. Now, what about oils? Almost all oils, except olive oil, refined sugars, refined grains, potato products, hard liquors, and animal products, regrettably, the chief sources of calories in the typical Western diet, have zero phytonutrients. So what we eat every day in America has almost none of these phytonutrients. Now, these are a part of our diet that have to be there if we want to stay healthy. Our bodies get very lazy, you see. If we can give up making something for ourselves, we do. For example, we're one of the few mammals that have lost the ability to synthesize vitamin C. We can't make it ourselves. And that's because we can get it from the food we eat. So phytonutrients fill the gap. They make up for what we no longer produce in our own bodies because we're lazy. They are critical in controlling gene messages that affect our health and our weight. And that's one of the major reasons you have to eat this plant-based diet of whole, real food. See, the phytonutrients turn on or off genes that control our weight and our metabolism and our health, and they benefit us in preventing almost every single known chronic disease of modern civilization. More phytonutrients are being discovered in foods every day, and these all fight disease. Here's some examples. We have isoflavones in soy foods, and lignans in flax seeds, and catechins in green tea, and polyphenols in chocolate and cocoa, and glucosinolates in broccoli, and camisol in rosemary, and resveratrol in red wine. All these are powerful anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and detoxifying compounds. And all these compounds fight disease and obesity through a whole series of different mechanisms. They're part of the secret of the Daniel Plan and the key way that we talk to our genes. Our ancestors foraged for wild food, wild berries and grasses and roots and mushrooms. Recently, I found myself in a sea of phytonutrients in the wild islands of Southeast Alaska. I was foraging along with the grizzly bears in the bog for cranberries and blueberries and nagoon berries and raspberries and strawberries. They were all smaller, but they were much richer in color and taste and much lower in sugar content compared to their domestic cousins. These berries were bursting with phytonutrients. The greater variety and the deeper color of the plants you eat, the higher the concentration of the phytonutrients in the diet. The greater the power they have then to prevent disease and promote weight loss. So, for example, fresh vegetables score fairly high on the phytonutrient index, while typical pastas and breads don't even make the list. This tells us that fresh vegetables are higher in healing phytonutrients than these other processed and refined foods. Processed carbohydrates actually score very low on the phytonutrient index. When carbs are processed, many of their important phytonutrient properties are stripped out of them. This is one of the reasons processed carbs are so bad for you. They are basically empty calories. I mean, did you ever wonder why we call them empty calories or what they're empty of? Well, they're empty of vitamins and minerals and these phytonutrients. So while increasing your sugar and energy intake, they don't offer any of the health benefits provided by whole plant foods that are rich in these phytonutrients. So what are the takeaways? What are the simple takeaways from this whole story about carbs? First, eat a lot of whole, real plant foods. If you know it was grown on a plant, eat it. If it was grown in a plant, don't eat it. Plant foods are the medicine of the future. They will help you heal your body and lose weight. They are a critical part of the Daniel Plan and essential for lifelong health. So eat lots of them and your body will begin to heal itself and you'll be happy and thin.